Hello, good afternoon, everyone. On your marketplace this afternoon, we throw the spotlight on Finance Minister's promise to provide unemployment benefit to persons affected by the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. How feasible is this? We will be engaging a labor expert. Also coming up ahead of the historic mid-year budget review on Thursday, former Finance Minister Setekbe wants government to separate borrowings for COVID-19 from ordinary expenditure. Details plus more on your marketplace right after this break. Welcome back. I am Sandra S. and I'm up and on. On today's Joy Business Spotlight, we throw the light on the Finance Minister's promise to provide unemployment benefits to persons affected by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. How feasible is this? And we do have the necessary data to support this decision. We are glad to have a labor expert join us. But first of all, let's hear what the Finance Minister said.
And then also the issue of burden sharing. As a responsible society in which we all sort of participate in the recovery and an equitable distribution when there's things to do. So I think we as a country, seeing what we have been able to do these 6 months compared to our neighboring countries, is really to sit up and say, okay, how do we even build this resilience to be stronger? And I think we should do something about digitalizing the whole economy, such that access to data is much cheaper, that giving obviously an online system for education is now much clearer to us, and that's the infrastructure we must build. Look at our healthcare system and the president bold move for Agenda 88 or 100 hospitals or so that we have to do to tackle some real intractable problems that we have. We don't have unemployment benefits in a system like that, so now it comes front and center as to what we do about that.
Is it something that you consider honorable?
Yeah, I think all of those things for a responsible society should have them. And maybe this is a time to make the bold move for things of that nature, so that, you know, everyone is taken care of. And an incidence of something like this, the issue of unemployment, etc., would have been catered for. So those become things that have to come into the media to a certain degree, but more importantly, the revitalization program for the next 3 years that we've been charged to deliver.
So that was the Finance Minister speaking to my colleague, George Uyafe. We are glad to have a labor expert, Austin Game, to help us make sense of this. And as we anticipate the Finance Minister's presence in Parliament tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Esina.
Right. So your reaction to the Finance Minister's comment?
Obviously, not a reaction, but my point of view. The reality is that we have some data in Ghana here, whether it's with Ghana Statistical Service, with Labor Department, or with ISE, or whoever. Certainly it's incomplete, but from what I know. And therefore, the inadequacies of information that is not available makes the benefit payment, if anything at all, a non-starter to start with. It's a good thing, which I have also, previous governments, present government, have been advocating and talking about. But I think that to be real, we're talking about some 14 million people who are available and ready for the job market. And it's just about, if SNIT data is anything to go by, just about some maybe 2 million plus people might be paying SNIT. That means they are in some kind of job. And therefore, if 10 million people or 8 million people will be benefiting from unemployment benefits, I think that burden will be too huge to be swallowed by the population based on what we know already about the capability of the economy to keep us going the way we are. So I think the wise thing to do is for government to continue and whoever comes into the saddle going forward, we should ensure that we open up the space for a lot more investment, praying that the pandemic will not be there or will slow down, to enable us to expand the economy, which is actually the function of any serious government, to enable us to absorb many more people into the formal sector, and of course, clean up the informal sector properly and get them properly listed as well. So if we can pay, then we can pay. But for now, it's a big challenge.
We'll certainly come to some of the measures to solve the unemployment situation in the country. But in other words, you're trying to say that we don't have the financial strength to be able to carry out, based on the numbers that you're giving us.
Yes, including the fact that we do not have even accurate data to help us guide those who will be faced with this challenge. I think that it's a good thought, and let's talk about it, but let's not be in a hurry in introducing it to create more problem for all of us.
Do you think that it would have been fair or appropriate for the finance minister or government to engage stakeholders to, digest some of the issues that you're raising currently before embarking on such an initiative, so that they better appreciate?
Some very serious conversation around the subject matter, not limited to government officials alone, not limited to a certain section. It must be based upon a national consensus, and therefore we must have a conversation, because we are going to be called upon to bear the burden by paying some, maybe few more taxes, paying something on top of something to enable those people to be cushioned. And therefore, it's not something that should be hoisted as a kite, and that is it. We should be very serious about it, have a good conversation around the table, and put various scenarios there, work it out and see whether it's feasible and doable. If it's not, let's hold it. If it's doable, then let's agree as to what the consequences will be for all of us. You
spoke about the challenges with data, and you're going with that of SNIT, I must say. How difficult is it to have data on persons who are unemployed in this country, and what can be done to solve that problem? Because with the 2 million that you mentioned, I got it right, I'm sure there are a lot more than what we have currently.
Obviously. And we catered for that when we were writing the labor law. It's very, very clear as to what should be done in our labor law. But we are not just doing it. We are not doing it. It may not be able to happen in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And so introducing or talking about it should just be about that. But an infrastructure will have to be properly put in place under the auspices of the Chief Labor Officer, as envisaged under Section 6 of the Labor Act, so that data collection will be done by them, not Ghana Statistical Service. That's not what we envisaged. And so if that is done well, they will have accurate, not just data, accurate data. It may even generate some employment more, and therefore reduce the unemployment benefit hangover on our necks. And so something that can be done as we envisage under the Section 6 of the Labor Act.
All right, so obviously this is just some form of relief for businesses as a result of the impact of COVID-19. But again, empowering people with skills, we've said that should be the way forward. How should we as a country prepare ahead and even beyond COVID to be able to get more people to employ themselves, other than always having to rely on governments and others to employ them?
Yes, our skilled manpower level is extremely very low. People can describe it the way they want to describe it, but if we are going to take away the traditional politicking and face reality, the manpower skill. Look, let me give you an example. If you go to the port in Tema, if you take Meridian Port Services as an example, there you have, if you are not skilled labor person, you cannot work with Meridian Port Services because the kind of equipments they have, unless you are properly trained, retrained, and skilled and tooled well, you cannot perform in that environment. So it's not just everybody who just gets up and then say, I'm ready for the job market. Our universities, our technical universities must rediscover themselves and properly ensure that the training regime we give people and make them available for the job market is not a talking shop, it's not a figure. It might be something that might be done, and when they go out, they need very little orientation and they begin to work. But employers cannot use too much of their money for excessive training as it is today. So these are the type of things we should be talking about.
If we should go by the finance minister's promise of providing unemployment benefits for persons, what should this entail? Is it going to be in monetary terms, and what will actually solve the problem for unemployed persons in this country?
Is to expand the economy, create opportunity for them to be employed, and not to have people registering as unemployed people in the volume and the numbers as we envisage it, so that we can reduce that impact, reduce the burden on everybody. So we have a small number. We are growing concern as a nation. We are not a very buoyant economy, and so I cannot anticipate that everything will be done right, in a minute. So what we need to do is to purposefully plan the economy well and ensure that we expand properly, create opportunity for people to match into their self-employment regimes also, and also into the formal sector, formal being on somebody's payroll, like you are in Joy, and so forth and so on. If we have this kind of expansion and we stop the excessive politicization of everything, I think that the sky will be not the limit for us. We should go beyond the sky.
Okay, so we have a similar thing currently being done. What will you say to critics who say that we have NAPCO, the Youth and Unemployment Program? How different would it be? Because it's obviously dealing with unemployment issues anyway.
As government itself said from the beginning, NAPCO is seriously a stopgap. And I can assure you from my little interview with some of the people who operate in that place, that is not their destiny. They're not thinking about that. So that being not their destiny, it should never be considered as a destiny for anybody. It's a stopgap measure. The people must be transited into something else. People can be well-trained bricklayers. Which sometimes we have to import some of those people from other countries to work for us in Ghana here. I know some like that. Now, carpenters must be well trained so that the finishing part of their whatever they do will be so beautiful and attractive that we don't need to import furniture from nowhere.
All right, quickly before you go, in 30 seconds, we know organizations and firms are laying off people without going through the appropriate procedure. What should these aggrieved workers or former workers do?
That's why we created the National Labour Commission. Should anybody, besides, they should sidestep Section 65 of the Labour Act and something else is being done, they should quickly report to the National Labour Commission or look for a consultant to assist them to enable them to have their matters redressed.
All right, Labour consultant, Mr. Austin Game, grateful for your time this afternoon. We stay on the mid-year budget review because in less than 24 hours, the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, will be in Parliament to present the historic mid-year budget review and supplementary budget. It is historic because the world is in serious crisis due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Government has revised its expenditure due to the pandemic, but ahead of that presentation tomorrow, former Finance Minister Seth Terkper is urging Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to separate the borrowings for COVID from ordinary expenditure. I engaged him earlier.
About 2.2, according to the documents given to Parliament, about 2.2 billion Ghana cedis, right, of the loan that we are borrowing, sovereign bond, is going to finance free SHS because, because of the pressure under the law not to use oil revenue. Are we going to be borrowing 2.2 billion annually? Even if it's cedis, to finance free SHS?
From all these indicators, do you think government can continue to fund the free SHS with COVID in now?
We are the progressively fee-free. So I can say for sure that if we had continued with the infrastructure, right, and we had built, completed our 200 free SHS schools. People say, but what would have happened? Precisely what would have happened was that we would have finished 200 free SHS schools. Can you imagine the impact of students staying in their community to attend school? Boarding costs will be down, and all those day schools, they will be sleeping on verandas, and other day students who are day students posted outside their homes and they are sleeping on verandas because there are no boarding houses, no infrastructure. No.
So what should government do now?
The trajectory will definitely be different.
So what should government do?
As somebody who has advised governments, and disclosure, I worked at a fund. You don't give solutions until somebody gives you the figures. Yes, on what are you basing on what are you basing the advice? So I'm saying, let us see the full cost of free SHS. Let's see where it is coming from, right? Then you can offer advice. Right? My flag bearer has said he would open up that for discussion for all Ghanaians. It's extremely difficult. I understand. It's extremely difficult for many people to talk about free SHS, right? Because immediately you are tagged as opposing free SHS. But there are issues. We are borrowing, right? We are doing all those things. So some of us are known by our training to ask, the questions. Right, so what do we have arrears? What are we going to do? Tertiary. The more students are going to tertiary from free SHS. Have you seen a budget? Because it's September. And that budget should have been provided for in the 2020 budget. Did you see a budget for 2020-21 for students who will be going tertiary? No. So on what basis are you going to offer the advice? All I know is that debt is increasing. Free SHS is part of that debt. Other things are part of that debt. There's no expenditure rationalization, even the COVID. Because the advice, the international advice is to prioritize expenditure, and put it more in health to tackle. We have seen.
Do you suspect that all the money that we are getting towards COVID-related issues and dealing with COVID will go into other areas like free SHS?
The Bank of Ghana, in their Monetary Policy Committee statement, MPC statement, did not give COVID as a reason for the 10 billion. They said the reason they are giving, so when the 10 billion I was referring to excludes the Bank of Ghana one.
Away from that, chairman of the Private Sector Fund for COVID-19, Senyor Huchi, is calling for a spirit of volunteerism in corporate bodies to overcome the development challenges of the country. According to him, the country has what it takes to face all economic and growth challenges regardless of the situation.
Our architects often like to work easily alone. So you have so many things here and there. I mean, the engineers, same. You don't easily have, it's never happened that you have the whole built environment professionals come together on a project. This is the first. Yeah. And they delivered value on scene. The competitiveness costs everything.
Yeah.
The engineering, the commitment, that dedication. I am always in awe. And I just don't know what I ever told them for them to believe that much. But these guys earned nothing for all that they did. Ghana will forever, ever be indebted to this group of people and the officers that worked on site. I'll tell you a story. At some point, we found 9 cases of COVID on our site. Yes. Everybody got destabilized. Wow. And I was in a meeting trying to raise money. I knew what was going to really happen on site. I had to dash down there. Everybody was confused. Everybody starts thinking about their families.
Yeah.
Everybody. And themselves.
And especially with the fact that you already quarantined your team.
Yeah.
It means that, you know, the risk of spread amongst the team was quite high. How did you guys scale that?
Well, this set of 9 were about some new set that had just started.
Okay.
So it was much easier to deal with because the very first group that was locked down didn't have that.
The National Information Technology Agency, NITA, says it is making sure all metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies in the country are properly connected to the internet to ensure a smooth flow of services over a fiber cable. Speaking in a virtual forum under the theme Internet and E-Government Solution During a Pandemic, the acting director of NITA, Richard Otrifosu, says the country must get its internet infrastructure right.
Obviously, NITA is responsible for regulating the ICT space. And one of our mandates is to make sure that the MDAs, MMDAs are connected and they work. So we also run the National Data Center. So vis-a-vis response to the strategy question, we are making sure that the connectivity that we provide to the MDAs, MMDAs are up and running. We've done a lot of rectification work to make sure that the fiber happens. One of the things that we are working on also is to make sure that we look at some of these issues, because everything that we're going to do, you're right, we are not in normal times. In this virtual world, you need the connectivity to work. Everything that we do with all the government initiatives and even on social media and some of these things that we do on the social.
Meanwhile, ranking member on the committee, Communication Committee in Parliament, Sam George, says it will be in the interest of the country to have the communication services tax reduced to lessen the burden on citizens.
Workers themselves have to have a lot more meetings virtually. This IGF meeting would have been in person, but we're all having to spend buy data to do this virtually. And so I want to see a government deal with the MNOs on the reduction of the pricing regime for data in the country. And one of the first things that government could actually do as a sign of good faith for the MNOs to follow suit will be to either immediately scrap, or at least in the interim for the rest of the six months of the year, suspend the CST, the Communication Service Tax, which imposes a 9% tax on all communications, especially, and it could be restricted to data, not voice. The CST 9% suspension could be on data, not voice, and that would help us with internet services. The next thing I want to see is also a government deal through NITA, the announcement of a government deal through NITA for the acquisition of additional bandwidth for the country at a cheaper rate. Now, if government were to do an auction for international bandwidth, an international auction, and say that we want to buy bandwidth and speak to all the various carriers, Main One and the Glow Marines and all of those people, Google, and say, look, we want a better deal that is going to make government buy bandwidth, huge capacity of bandwidth at lower prices, and then redistribute this through the telcos, through the MNOs for cheaper pricing. That is one thing you can get done. I mean, when the ISPs, and people who have been in the industry may not forget the fact that until a time when the ISPs came together to do an international auction, they were paying as much as $4,000 a month for connectivity as ISPs. And that dropped drastically when we did an international auction. The last thing I want to see government do is critical spending, a critical allocation of funding to NITA again, for NITA to improve last mile connectivity. Because you see, we are speaking in the IGF, and last year in Berlin, we spoke about the fact that the rest of the world is leaving Africa behind. But even when we come home here to Ghana, most of our connectivity discussion is around our major cities and our district capitals. When you go beyond the district capitals, you do not even have edge.
On that note, we end the marketplace this afternoon. I am Sandra Esinam Apenu. Log on to myjoyline.com/business for more business